sometimes we can get convicted about something that somebody says, and our flesh gets in the way, and then it turns into offense as a result of, like, rather than God had intended that moment to convict us, it was the Holy Spirit convicting us, and we flip it into offense, and then we get at somebody like, no, you shouldn't say that because, I mean, what do you think about that?
Oh, absolutely. And that is one of the biggest tools that the enemy has, is to get you into offense. Because, see, you can't, I mean, I'm just going to be real and transparent.
Yeah,
right before we went on, I was aggravated about the whole camera situation that we couldn't get going. I was aggravated about it, even though I know it was nobody's fault in particular. It just aggravated me because I'm like, I'm always late. I'm always late to the program. This is, and that's my mom coming out in me, not my dad. Everybody knows that. It's my mom. And so it's that pastor coming out in me. And I'm like, okay, we've got to be on time. But I knew when right before I didn't even sit down, and I asked God, I said, Lord, I need to be back in the right space, the right heart condition, spiritual place to be able to speak. I can't speak if I'm angry. I can't speak if I have malice. I can't speak if I'm frustrated, because, I mean, yeah, sure, we can open our mouth and speak, but it's not going to carry much weight, because love never fails. And so if you work out of love and you speak out of love, which is why if I get really aggravated at somebody, I start doing the whole love confession out of Corinthians. And so I do the whole confession, because I'm like, I can't stand up in front of people and give a word from the Lord if I'm not operating out of love. Yeah. And so, yes, I do think that it can try to affect us too, because we read comments or something like that. Not that we do it on purpose, but we can read it, and then we get offended at something that somebody said. And when you're like, I'm going to address that the next time I'm on air, I'm going to talk about that. And God's like, then I will reschedule you.
That's funny, because I was actually just talking to my wife about this very thing. Because I was saying somebody had sent a very unkind comment that I saw this morning. And I was like, my first thought was, don't you have anything better to do? But I was like, I should just address this, not say names. And my wife was like, if you do that, you are, that's exactly what Satan wants. He wants you to engage this and start something. And I was like, oh, like, see, that's why my wife is amazing, because sometimes you just can't see. And that's why it's good to have fellowship, because you can have people go, hey, don't do that. Here's why. Because sometimes we just can't see, So, yeah.
So, and during this time, I mean, listen, there's a lot of things that, I mean, I woke up to something this morning very similar. Yeah. And apparently we have, we live in the largest county in the state of Alabama. That's where the church is. That's, it is the largest county. Okay. And there's a Facebook page that this county and everything going on in the county. We are the talk of that Facebook page at the moment, which I consider it an honor. Thank you. But we have people telling us what they're saying and things like that. And it's just situations like that. And I want to speak up, and I want to say something, and I want to address it and all this. And then when I sit behind the camera or I get up on the platform or something like that, I promise you, God will move me in a different direction. And then once it's over, I'll think, man, I was going to say that. I was going to address that. And God was like, no, you ain't.
You're like, I know you were. That's why we do a little diversion. Yeah.
But it is easy to get into offense, especially right now, during this time where everybody's split right down the middle. It's such this was the biggest church split of all time. As my dad says, the glasses year, the bam, bam, your vision, that year, that number. And I'm just saying it over and over so people will get it. They'll be like, oh, yeah.
2020, there, I said it.
Okay, that's what we said, but that's all we're saying. Yeah. That's all we're saying. But he said during that year, ever since that happened, I mean, it split everybody directly down the middle. You want to talk about the biggest church split of all time. It split people right down the middle, the church, friends, family, everybody, because at that moment you found out who stood on the side of righteousness and who didn't.
Yep.
And it split everybody directly down the middle, and we're still not over it. We're still not over it, which lets you know how big of a deal that actually was, because we would be past that by now.
Yep.
But we're not. We're not. And the number one reason is because the church is getting the enemy has infiltrated the church to the point where he has us fighting against each other.
That's right.
That we can't fight the darkness or expose them, pull the cover off, because we're arguing with each other.
Yeah.
And we're talking about each other.